Good evening. It's Sunday evening. This is Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
I'm John.
This is John. He's not wearing a hat, but he has a prop today, a doll head.
Doll heads, cute little doll heads. Are you wanting to talk? Go ahead. I was singing. Go ahead.
No, I was enjoying.
Oh.
Stage fright?
A little bit.
Okay. And this is John's favorite, from one of his favorite haunted locations.
Hate dolls and grandmas.
Grandma ghosts.
Scary.
And Eric,
Grandma
just for you. Yeah, and Eric, just for you, this doll head is from Bad Grandma's house. So.
No, mannequins are hot, Eric. Love mannequins. Oh.
You're thinking of blow-up dolls.
Oh, right. Never mind.
Okay.
I don't like mannequins either.
Okay, we'll get serious here. I wouldn't do that.
And that's probably worth more than my life.
Yeah, it is from Germany.
You sure?
Yeah, it's got the mark on the back.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. And while John digresses, we want to welcome our guest tonight, Kathryn Kaye. Kathryn is an author and paranormal investigator from the Pennsylvania area.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and just, I know you can't see it on screen, but John just covered up the doll. I think he buried it. So, so we're kind of initiating Kathryn by fire here. Kathryn, we're really glad that you are here tonight, and I'm really interested in hearing some of your experiences. Kathryn is the author of the True Tales of Ghostly Encounters book series, as well as some fiction books, and that's interesting to learn about the differences and dynamics of writing those different genres. But Kathryn, tell us how you got into the wonderful field of paranormal investigation.
Well, ever since I was a child, it seems that I've been a little bit more sensitive to spirits, if you will. I'm not going to say I'm a psychic or anything like that. I don't want to misrepresent myself, but I'm just a little bit more sensitive. I think I see a little bit more, hear a little bit more, pay attention a little bit more.
Yeah.
And when I was a little girl, the house that I grew up in, there were these colored lights that would follow me around all the time when I was a child. Didn't seem to mess with anybody else, but they followed me constantly, and I think that's kind of where I got my initial interest, was just ever since I could remember, there was always something around me or in some way presenting itself to me. And so I just kind of went from there. I wanted to learn more. I'm very scientific-minded, so I think that I bring that along as well. And I try to find, rational explanations whenever I can. It gives people peace of mind, but there are times in which there just simply is no rational explanation.
That's very true, very true. So what made you take the leap from the interest to investigating?
Just from people wanting to ask me to come in. I don't know how I managed to get a reputation. It's kind of a small town, maybe that's what it is. Yeah. And, people are like, you know what, she seems to be able to have a little bit of better luck communicating, and it just kind of escalated from there. And I'm always been pretty open-minded to the different stories and experiences of other people, and I think not shooting people down when they talk about it kind of pushed me in that direction as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So now my understanding is that after investigating, you got pretty interested and fascinated with a particular case that led to your first book. Is that right?
That is absolutely true. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
When I first went into the house, the big thing was there is this window it's like a back door. It has like a glass window, leads to the outside. And the family that was there was kind of like freaking out because there was this face in a window, and I don't mean just like an outline. I mean you could see everything in this face that had appeared. I don't know if you remember back in like the 80s, you would get like little bubble gum packs, and they would like holograms in them, or in magazines, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. This is kind of what it was like, because you could move around and see it from different angles. It had that kind of 3D look.
Oh, wow.
And you could see up its nose. You could see in its mouth. You could tell it had a cavity. You could see like the little lines in its lips and just everything. You could see all the way around the eyes. And this face didn't go away. It was there for 2 weeks. It moved a little bit, like it would shift here and there. You could see the eyes would be in different directions, or the mouth would be open or closed or whatever. But for 2 whole weeks, this face was there. So me and like 8 other people are there every day. We are snapping pictures. We're taking videos. We're trying to do EVPs. We're trying to figure out what's going on. And I knew that there was a lot of other activity in the house, but I have never witnessed anything like this. And the picture, it's one of the pictures, there are actually hundreds of pictures of this face. But one of the pictures is now the cover of the book. And I have had people tell me that it's the most incredible piece of photographic evidence that they have ever seen. I had people who, in an effort to see if it was real or not, send it out to tons of experts, and they're like, this is amazing. This is the only time we have ever had every single expert say there's no way this is fake. I sent them the raw files and everything, And I think that particular part of this house that first drew me in and caused me to stay there for more than a year, and going back to doing investigations. So the book that I wrote, The Ghost Family of Pennsylvania, is 100% true according to my experiences and the people that I interviewed. Now, I don't know if anybody embellished. That you get that sometimes when you interview people. But I didn't change anything. I didn't add any fiction or anything like that, which actually kind of bit me a little bit. I had a little bit of criticism, people saying, well, it's cool, but it's not really scary, or it's not, there's not enough to the story. And I said, well, it's not supposed to be fiction. It's not. It's to tell the real story of what happened to the very best of my ability. So I felt if I added something or I embellished on it, that it would take away from the integrity of what I was trying to present with the story itself. And later on, we managed to see a child spirit on several occasions, and the face is the same face as in the window.
Oh, wow.
As was on the child, yeah.
Have you seen this picture?
It was in the bio that you...
Oh, that I probably didn't read?
Yeah.
My bad, sorry.
Yeah, so
that's okay. It's there. You can look it up for future reference. And it's the cover of the book, so anybody who sees the book sees the picture automatically.
And I was going to ask you, what was it? Just a normal glass pane? I mean, it wasn't like mirror,
it's just
silvered.
No, it's not a mirror. There's nothing on either side. It goes to a backyard. So we went out in the backyard. We tried to take pictures through on the other side, and you could kind of get like an outline, but not really what you were seeing from inside the kitchen. Right. But the kitchen itself happens to be like the biggest source of activity in the home. There is activity in other places, and I'm not 100% sure why the kitchen is the big thing.
Right.
But the child will actually run through the kitchen, and you can see like the shadow of the kid as they run. You can hear the footsteps, the giggling, and we managed to capture some of that as well. And then there's 2 other spirits in the home. There is a male and a female. And then after investigating the history of it, we discovered that there was a child in the 1970s that lived in this house that ran out into the street and was killed.
Oh,
and
wow.
His mother was committed to the Danville State Mental Hospital here in Pennsylvania following his death. She was released a year and a half later, and upon her release, her and her husband committed suicide in the house.
Oh, wow.
Neither one of them were able to handle the loss of the child, who was only 4 years old at the time. So,
and this is
and I can sympathize.
Yeah, this is Danville that has quite a reputation now as a haunted site, right? Same place.
Yeah, the actual house is in Sunbury, not Danville, but that's where the mother was committed prior to the suicide.
Wow.
But yeah, there is quite a bit with Danville State Hospital as well.
It almost the picture, and for anyone that's in the chat room, you can see it right now. The picture reminds me almost of a negative on a glass plate or something, and it disappeared later.
Well, no, we could see the picture or the face when we were taking the pictures of it, but when we took the pictures, it seemed like everything had like this orangish hue to it.
Right.
And that was a little odd. And another thing that was interesting is the glass itself was clean before this appeared, but during this time it almost looked like there was drippings around the edge of it. I don't even know what to say that was. There was nothing physically on the glass. We tried to clean it, we tried to wipe it, nothing there. And it was the weirdest thing. I don't really have an explanation for it. It's unlike anything else I had ever encountered.
It's almost like stories and legends of mirrors containing spirits, almost.
Yeah, there's a lot throughout history. A lot of cultures believe that mirrors, pools of water, anything with a reflective property would also reflect the spirit worlds or other planes of existence or things, to that effect. So I don't really know what to say. I don't have an explanation or an opinion one way or another, but it is interesting with this house that on at least 4 other separate occasions, the bathroom mirror upstairs is where the mother's spirit could be seen, but only in the reflection. There was never a picture caught of her, unfortunately. She seemed to be the spirit that was the most distraught. The father spirit will actually communicate. He was the only one we got to get direct communication. We got great EVPs. We got some good contact. The woman who lives in the house, at one point, she was seriously injured. I guess a picture had fallen off the wall and the glass had broken. Now, there was like a lot of that. Things would fall off the walls, things fall out of the cabinets, they open, they close, stuff crashes. But she does not believe that the spirits in the house were trying to hurt her. They don't seem to be malicious in any way. They just don't seem to be, and every time that there was contact, it was pleasant. It wasn't, like a get out type thing. But this picture did fall, and the glass shattered, and she cut her foot like really bad. She severed a vein and nicked an artery.
Wow.
And the glass, she was just bleeding all over the place. It was horrible. She was in the hospital for a day and a half. They had to cauterize it and staple her leg back together. It was horrible. And she wasn't supposed to be walking at all. And at one point, like a week later, she went down the basement steps to try to get her husband's work clothes because he was running behind. And she hears this voice that says, what are you doing? And she thinks it's her husband. And she turns around and nobody's there. Well, here he's outside having a cigarette going, I didn't talk to you. I wasn't in the house. I don't know what you're talking about.
Almost as if they watched her a bit.
Yeah. So you're saying, okay, I can't sit by idly and watch you tumble around like this. You've got to go back upstairs.
You know what that picture reminds me of?
What does the picture remind you of?
You remember the kid from The Grudge, the meowing kid? Tell me that'll look like the meowing kid from The Grudge.
I never even thought of it, but yeah, kind of.
It does kind of a bit.
That would scare the shit out of me. I ain't gonna lie. That kid freaks me out.
I am curious now that you said the woman got hurt with the picture falling. How did the parents commit suicide? What method?
And they put strychnine in some wine and then went up to the child's room. I guess when the child was actually hit by a car, his father ran out, picked him up out of the street, and carried him to his bedroom while his mother's on the phone trying to get an ambulance. Right. And the child died before the ambulance got there in the bedroom. Now, from what I understand, according to the newspaper clippings and things that we had found, when the parents committed suicide, they drank the wine and then laid on the child's bed. You know, kind of like we have to be as close to where he passed on when we go. So I guess in an effort to find the child, that's kind of what we were getting from that.
Right. And I've encountered a couple recently, actually, that has that kind of feeling that they're very tied to the house that a child died in and don't want to leave it.
Yeah, on a side note, and hopefully I don't end up outing anybody, one thing that we captured a lot of was the sound of a baby crying, and we could not find the record of an infant being in the house. We're like, why are we getting baby cry? And I mean, we got it a lot. I don't even know how many EVPs of clearly an infant, not an older child. Well, here I was talking to the next door neighbors, trying to find out, you know, how things were going with them. Did they have any experiences? Has anybody, you know, seen anything? And they said, oh yeah, we get stuff too. And the houses are almost touching. Okay. And they say they get like shadows, they get strange voices, they hear footsteps, that kind of stuff. And then later on in a conversation, he mentions to me that his daughter had a baby who passed away from sudden infant death syndrome, and that they had planted a rose bush in her honor. And I was like, we don't need to say anything about the baby crying. I don't know how they would react, and I don't want to stir up bad emotions. But at that point, we figured, well, maybe this infant voice is not directly related to the same family. It's a separate, you know, incident. So I'm not even sure. I think at some point I actually took that out of the book, but I'm not 100% sure. I remember debating to myself, do I keep that in or do I not keep that in?
Right. Because I didn't find it. And I didn't know how they would react. Some people, they're very calmed by that. They're like, oh, that's wonderful. My child's spirit is still here. And other people would it would freak them out or upset them or think that I was trying to upset them. And I wouldn't want to do that. I always try to be respectful to everyone that I deal with. So, yeah, that was one of the things that had happened. And the family that lives there, they had a baby as well. They actually had to get rid of their baby monitors because there was always the sound of a baby crying on the monitor when their son wasn't actually crying. Mother was going nuts, running to check on the baby every 5 seconds that he was playing or sleeping. So it was coming through the baby monitor.
Yeah. And they would get strange voices through the baby monitors all the time too, kind of like creep them out a little bit. I've
had that in situations too before, and it certainly can be disconcerting for people when they're not expecting something like that. So I take it that the new owners are basically incorporating what's going on in their lives and are not upset by it.
Yeah, that's exactly true. The only intervention that was really done is we did have somebody come in and try to help the mother's spirit, because she seemed to be she was the only one who seems distraught. There was like a wailing that would go on for a while, and at one point they tried to remodel the bathroom, and there was like this rack in the bathroom for like towels and things like that was there when they moved into the house. Mm-hmm. And they moved the rack into the hallway so they could paint the bathroom. And then in the middle of the night, they kept hearing this voice say, "What is this? What is this?"
Oh, my.
And it didn't stop till they moved the rack. It was just over and over and over again. And when I went to question them about that, they said, well, they hear pacing in the hallway at night, back and forth, pace and pace and pace and pace. And we did several EVPs, and it was always the mother's voice in the hallway, never any of the other two. So we had somebody come in who said it is possible that when she passed on, she did not find her child's spirit and her husband's spirit, even though they are still in the house. So they tried to do something to connect them, try to get them to pass together. They did not pass. They're still in the house. I don't know what happened, if they just weren't ready or if that didn't work, whatever. I wasn't actually there for that. But the wailing has stopped. And the pacing has stopped. And now there's a much more peaceful vibe in the house. But you can still hear the child running and laughing, and every so often you can hear the father. But the father spirit always appears as like the shadow type figure that people see a lot.
Right.
And I spent a great deal of time trying to investigate during the time in which he appears, because shadow figures are one of those things that creep people out to no end.
Some people
they look demonic if you don't know what you're doing. And since he is very pleasant and willing to communicate to the best of his ability, he's aware that people are there. He will try to communicate as long as he can. I found his study to be particularly interesting as well, because it allowed me to show people that just because something looks dark doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And I don't want people to think that they can just go and approach, whatever, because sometimes it is menacing. Sometimes it does have malicious intent. But my hope with the entire book series is to show that you don't always have to be afraid. It's just something we don't understand yet. And the more we learn, the more we can understand, and the more we can reduce the fear and anxiety that people may be feeling who are having similar experiences. And that was kind of like the whole purpose behind writing the books to begin with, was to just share the story. Let people know this is what happens. If this is happening to you, you're not alone,
Right. And I think our experience, I think John would probably say the same, is that, whoops, did I wake you up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that shadow people often it is not something dark, and that they are human spirits that just manifest in that way.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with how much energy they have access to, or whatever. They're able to try to, it's like they're trying to say, hey, look, I'm here, and sometimes that's all that comes out. Sometimes you get something else, and even with the same spirits, I have noticed sometimes it's very shadowy, and sometimes you get like almost like an outline, or for a second you think you're actually seeing somebody there.
Right.
And
well, I know one example that was told to me once, and is kind of stuck with me, is that, well, when we say, well, why don't they just manifest and get the full body apparition all the time, and was that, well, we all don't have the same abilities and skills, and it would be like saying that we all should be able to play basketball like Michael Jordan.
Right.
And why should we assume it's any different on the other side? They come through as they can come through. So
yeah, I agree with you fully. And another thing that I'd like to mention for people who might, who are not paranormal professionals, people who might just be experiencing things, you got to understand that these are the spirits of human beings. They're going to have human emotion. So when you come across something that may seem like it's angry or upset, it might not be trying to hurt you. It might be the situation that surrounded this person's death, or they might be fearful that you're in their home. I mean, think about it like somebody coming into your home when you're alive. Just all of a sudden, there's people there. Hey, how's it going? We're going to take pictures of you now, or we're going to record you, and you're like, get out of my house. What are you doing?
Exactly. And that's definitely our approach. What are your feelings on provoking and some of the more theatrical approaches that seem to be popular?
I never do that. I think that it's disrespectful, and I always try to treat spirits and the people that I'm working with kindness and respect, regardless of the situation. And that's the way that I try to treat everyone in general, but I take that with me when I go out, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I have a little bit of better luck communicating, because I don't approach it with fear, and I don't approach it with the intent of provoking or upsetting. I'm there more as a listener. I present as a friend.
What kind of equipment do you like to use?
Well, video cameras, EVPs, infrared recorders, full spectrum cameras. You name it, we use it.
Yeah. Anything particular you seem to have the best luck with?
I like the full spectrum and the infrared cameras a lot, because it seems to me that sometimes when you're not seeing something, it's just because it's on a little bit different of a wavelength. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's there, so I think that opens up a wider range. Motion detector cameras seem to work pretty good, and EMF meters, there definitely is a connection with the electromagnetic field, so that kind of helps to pinpoint, what you're looking for. So,
what would you? How do you approach a new case? Someone comes to you and thinks that they have activity. What kind of process do you go through before you decide to investigate?
Well, the first thing I like to do is speak to people to find out exactly what is going on for them. I have in psychology as well, and I don't try to psychoanalyze people or anything like that, but I am able to recognize certain cues that may say that there might be something within that person themselves that is causing them to think that they're having experiences when they might not be, and that kind of helps to determine. But generally speaking, if somebody comes to me for help, I try to help everyone. I don't turn people down. I was recently interviewed by somebody on the radio who said, have you ever been too afraid to go into some place or felt that it was too malicious? And I said no, because at this point, I have not come across anything that I felt like I couldn't handle. That doesn't mean that there's not things there. Where she works, there are a lot of dark spirits. She's down there in Louisiana, where there was horrific things that happened during the slave times. And some of the spirits there, they are terrified, and they will react as such. So where I'm at, it's a little bit more, generally speaking anyway, in my experiences, not as angry, but I just try to get as much history as I can, and that background, and I try to research the area before and after, see what's going on, and then I always try to debunk whatever I can. If there's an explanation for it, even if it's not 100%, say this is a possibility, this might be what is causing this. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no activity there, but sometimes certain things, you can say, hey, look, this might be the reason for that. But on the other hand, I try my best not to openly say, what I think that this is fake or that is fake. A lot of people do that. I try to just, if I feel that way, I don't say anything publicly. I might say something personally, but I don't ever say anything to people in public because, I think it's disrespectful. And like I said before, I always try to treat everybody the way that I would want to be treated.
You see how she treats me?
I see that.
Well, he's sitting here pulling the paper back and forth over the doll, so I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
Not just like dolls in general.
Oh, come on, look at this face. Tell me that ain't a creepy doll. Well, it's creepy.
Well, I guess we should preface that the house it came out of...
creepy doll.
Yeah, about 500 doll heads.
Have you noticed that all the creepy dolls, they all have that old-timey face? It's, spirits not like the new toys, or what?
Well, that's kind of interesting because, right now they have the trigger toy thing out, turn into toys and trick objects.
Yeah, I see that.
It's kind of interesting because, you know, I wonder if they have any better luck. You know, does Elmo end up on it? I don't know. I love it. I think you should keep it.
Actually,
I'm gonna make a necklace out of
book. They actually bought Christmas presents for the child spirit. They bought a truck and a ball, and they said, "This is for you. We don't know your name yet, but this is for you, and we want you to know." And they did say that on several occasions the ball or the truck would be kind of rolling around on the floor. But yeah, the child likes to. They have how old is their kid? 5, I think. The child spirit likes to be around the kids that's the same age. Mm-hmm. And they had bought this cardboard coloring crayon house, whatever it is, for their kid. And the doors and windows of that cardboard house would open and close all the time. The kid's like, I don't know if I want to be in there. So it was right around Christmas, and they got a ball and a truck and said, you know, this is for you. We want you to be able to, you know, be a part, you know, and to have some toys to play with. And so it's kind of funny. It wasn't creepy at all.
We can't really say anything because one of the historic sites that we investigate, and we actually do education and public tours there, has child spirits, and we actually do bring in toys for the spirits. So and balls will roll unexplainedly, etc. So yeah, we can't say anything because we actually do that ourselves on some of our locations where we're more in tune with them.
I think a certain amount of pleasure in seeing that children are still able to play and mm-hmm. have you know, some peace afterward. You know, if that didn't happen, I think it would be very sad.
Exactly, I agree with you. I sure do. Now, I found it interesting that, you know, you've gone from writing on this private haunting in a residence to basically some of the biggest stories in the Old West.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Arizona, so I already had some experiences with Tombstone and the surrounding area. I was there all the time when I was a child. So that was where I went, just based on my own personal experiences immediately afterward. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep writing these books, and I'm going to keep going to different places. And Tombstone was the natural place for me to go next, just because that's where I grew up. And one of the first places that I had been in, other than the house that I lived in when I was a child, that I had had experiences with when I was young. My dad, he was a geologist. He was also a miner. So there were many times that we were up in that area just fiddling around. And ever since I was like 5 and 6, we would go to, you know, the Birdcage Theater. And of course, at that time, I didn't understand what it was. I didn't know it was a brothel. I didn't know it was a poker house. I just knew that when you went in there, sometimes you could hear poker chips falling or pianos playing when there's nobody there. And it almost always smells like cigars, even though you're not allowed to smoke in there now. And, you know, I was like, this is cool, you know, as a little girl running around having no idea what the actual history was of the place. But yeah, that's what inspired me to do Spirits of the Old West. And as I started going into that, I found that Doc Holliday is now my absolute favorite historical character from the Old West, or person. I don't want to say character because it was a real person. Just because before writing the book, I did not know how truly messed up that poor man was.
Yeah, he had some issues. He certainly did.
He went from being an intelligent man who wanted to be a dentist and he wanted to help people, and then he ended up getting tuberculosis, and nobody wanted to go see the dentist. And who wants to see a dentist who's coughing in your face every 5 seconds?
And you
know, he's like, people are like, oh my God, get away. So he had to find a new way to make a living. And because he was so smart, he learned to count cards and he became an excellent gambler. But because he was so sick and knew that he was dying, he became very cold-hearted. And to the point where it's like he didn't even care if he was going to be shot, so it made him one of the most dangerous gunfighters imaginable because he didn't approach it with fear. It was like, you know what, I'd rather die by a bullet than to let this sickness get me. And there are stories of him doing things, like in one instance, he was playing a card game called Favo, which was the most popular card game of the Old West. And he's playing with this other man, and this man says, you know what, you're cheating. There's no way that you could be winning this much. You're cheating. To which case, Doc Holliday doesn't say anything, but he rips out a knife and disembowels the man right there at the table, then reaches over, grabs his chips, and says, well, I win, sir. You know, and that was just who he became. And so the book focuses on him a lot because as he went, he killed so many people that were later said to have come back. And then he himself, after he died, there are 3 separate locations in which people claim to see his spirit. And the interesting thing is that even though they're nowhere near each other, there's Tombstone, Arizona, Colorado, and Georgia, the spirit is almost always exactly the same dress, the same mannerisms in all 3 locations. I found that particularly interesting. And 2 of those locations, it is unknown where he's actually buried. There are two grave markers for him. And people say, well, he was moved from one to the other, but there's no solid historical documents that suggest that he was actually moved. So,
well, that's explains a lot. You know, if you have an unsettled grave or a disturbed grave, just like a marked grave. But it also kind of illustrates, in our experience investigating, we've pretty well concluded that spirit isn't tied to a particular location. It's often it's volition. They decide that they're comfortable in a particular place, but they can go other places, maybe hundreds or thousands of miles.
Yeah, and that explains too why the same spirit would be seen in Tombstone, which is where he spent most of his life, where his good friends were. He was best friends with Wyatt Earp, who was the lawman of the area. How funny is that? Because Doc Holliday was probably like the worst outlaw, and his best friend is the law.
Well, of course, Wyatt Earp watched both sides of the line.
He was no innocent either.
Yeah, exactly. when he didn't have a badge on, he was dealing cards. So.
Yeah.
What? Nothing. I saw the movies.
Do we shadow your image?
Oh, no, I saw the movie.
Oh, you saw the movies.
Yeah, I don't read, but I saw the movies.
Yeah, he tells it all.
True story. I even saw one and gotten somebody.
Really?
It was on the movie.
Really?
Tombstone. You haven't seen Tombstone?
Oh, yeah, I guess it was in that one.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Are you drinking?
Could be. Yeah, Monster. He wishes. I think he's been talking to the doll head too much today. So, other than Doc Holliday, who was your favorite spirit from the Old West?
From the old, okay, well, Doc Holliday, of course. Wyatt Earp's wife, Sadie Jo, she's fascinating. She is a fascinating character. Yeah, she wanted to be a movie star, and during that time, that was when it very first started to come out. Film first started to come out, and she wanted to go. She wanted to go so bad and be in film. And Wyatt Earp and Sadie Jo did actually move to California later in their life, but she was told in no uncertain terms, "You're too old now, honey."
Yeah.
And it totally kind of broke her heart. She was just devastated. She would hang around on the movie sets and say, well, you should make a movie about my husband. You know, he was famous in Tombstone, and you should make a movie about him. And they're like, yeah, there's no market for that. And, of course, how many Westerns were made about him afterwards? But she actually returned to the Birdcage Theater after her passing. It was a big part of her life prior to that. And one of the big legends is that if you go and take enough pictures in her room, she will start to appear, kind of like perform for the camera. And because there is that interaction, she's very interesting. And then in a mine that is near Tombstone, it's not in Tombstone, but I included it in the book, there was a mine that there was several brutal murders, including a man who was run through with a drill press, probably because he was invoking slave labor into the mines. I think somebody got kind of mad about that. His murder was never solved, but he was killed in this mine. And there is a multitude of activity in that particular mine. The man's name was Frederick Brunkow. You heard of it?
Oh, brown cow? Brown chicken, brown cow. Sorry, go ahead.
I wonder who's drinking.
That was really interesting, too. In the book, I speak with an elderly couple who just went around looking at the area, and the woman kind of like ventured into the mine a little bit and saw, a shadow in the mine and heard like this sound, kind of like almost like a growling. She went running out, and her husband said, "You know what? I think maybe you had a stroke or something." So he actually took her to a hospital to get checked out, because it's not like her to be saying this kind of stuff. He didn't really believe in it. He was there. He didn't see or hear anything.
Uh-huh.
But his wife was just a little bit deeper into the mine, and she's like, "I don't care what you say. I know what I saw."
A question. Actually, it's a question in the chat room. Do you think there's a difference between East Coast spirits and West Coast spirits?
It's hard to say. I don't even know if I can answer that.
I'm thinking there's probably a dress difference. I mean, one's more gangbanger, one's more like yuppie.
West Coast is probably more casual Friday.
Casual Friday, yeah. Maybe some jeans.
Cultural differences. I would imagine that there's a difference in mannerisms and based on culture and time period. And, here on the East Coast, we get a lot of older spirits, some of the very earlier things, before the country started to move west. That doesn't mean that there's not Native American spirits there. And, I'm Cherokee, so believe me, I understand a lot of that. But Native Americans, I don't want to generalize, don't really view ghosts as being paranormal. This is part of life. It's more like, well, this is our ancestors. This is the ones who were here before us. We welcome them in. So you don't get as many stories because most people who have grown up in traditional Native American homes don't run from it. They're just like, oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Everyone's hanging around.
Yeah, I grew up in a fairly open-minded house, and it was pretty common. I mean, spirits have been part of my life for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
So
same here. Well, and you grew up around a lot of Indians.
I grew up around a lot of Native Americans in Oklahoma. So that was pretty.
Really? That's actually where my family is from. Is Oklahoma, Tahlequah, Oklahoma. The Cherokee in Tahlequah.
Tahlequah?
Yeah.
Tahlequah, yeah.
I'm from Quapaw. Well, I graduated from Quapaw.
Yeah, so, Tahlequah is about 2 hours from here.
Roughly.
Yeah, and that is the center of the Cherokee Nation, so. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I spent time living on the reservation there when I was really young. And then my family moved to Arizona, and, we were not on reservation land in Arizona, but.
Are you in Arizona now?
No, I live in Pennsylvania.
Where now?
Pennsylvania.
I live in
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I think I moved back to Arizona.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. She's now you're working on a book about Gettysburg.
Ooh,
yes, I'm spending 3 months in Gettysburg this summer, doing investigations and working on a book for that. And I'm also doing a show called Unseen Visitors. And there's going to be a lot of filming going on in Gettysburg there as well. So the show's not out yet. It won't be out until the summer. But, filming now.
And see, we have a connection there because there's a lot of Civil War activity here and sites that have Civil War connections. And in fact, we just investigated last night at a location that was built on what was a Civil War fort over in Kansas. So we definitely have that shared interest there. We deal with that.
And it's really important to get those out too, because a lot of people, when they think Civil War, they automatically think Gettysburg, but it was a nationwide thing. It wasn't just that huge battle. That just happened to be the most recorded one in the history books. It doesn't mean that there is not a multitude of activity that is related all over the country. So I think that's awesome. That we definitely want to share it. But Gettysburg's something that I've wanted to do for a while. Being from Pennsylvania, It's like, well, not. I shouldn't say I'm from Pennsylvania. I've lived here for 15 years, so I kind of feel like I'm from Pennsylvania. But yeah, I've been there many times, and I'm like, this has got to be the next book of how to do Gettysburg.
Well, I tell you what, if you have one of the experiences where you see the phantom soldiers, you have to come back and tell us about it, because Gettysburg is famous for that, and we actually have a
well, if you just want to bring us out, I mean,
sure.
I'll be there. You're more than welcome to come and join me.
I think John is packing his bags right now.
I don't even need to pack. I think I got some clean socks in my bag, so we're good.
Clean socks.
Come out here one of these days too. We can show you around too. We have a Civil War battlefield about 80 miles from here that phantom soldiers are seen at regularly at Wilson's Creek.
Oh yeah.
And so
I passed by there.
I'm familiar with Wilson's Creek, so yeah.
It's it's certainly a time period that had a lot of hauntings for a lot of the country. So I think you'll really, really enjoy that. And so you're doing a show. Where's it going to be seen at?
YouTube, Vimeo, Daily Motion, and then we're working. I cannot guarantee it. We're working on trying to get contracts with Netflix and Hulu and Vudu. So those are it's still in the early stages. I can't promise I'm trying to get those, but it absolutely will be on YouTube and Vimeo and Daily Motion. Those ones are already secured and ready to go, and it will be actual shows, not just random videos. Unseen Visitors will be there will be investigations filmed, interviews with both people who have had experiences and interviews with other paranormal professionals. And then the history of areas and legends and things like that will also be presented. So it'll have a lot of variety, a lot of different things that appeal to different people, and hopefully it's a good thing. I'm a little nervous. I've never hosted a show before. And then ironically, around the same time, I got asked to do a show for authors where I'll be interviewing other authors just of different genres. So I'm going to be busy.
It sounds like it.
I like the genre.
Mm-hmm. Any particular genre?
Well, it's genre.
Well, that's true. That's true. I like chakra.
Well, no, but John.
I understand. I get that.
My name's not Shock.
No.
No. I have a cold, so I'm a little goofy today. There's lack of sleep.
Don't look at me. You're going to spend the night up there.
I'm not sleeping. I'm not even going to comment on that.
In a haunted hotel?
It wasn't the haunted people that were bothering me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Where are you looking? What? Ooh, too much cold medicine, I think.
A little cold medicine, a little monster, he's good to go.
That's right.
And a Diet Mountain Dew. That's usually how my day goes.
Caffeine and cold medicine.
That's
you got to counterbalance that whole drowsiness thing.
That's right. That's how you get through the drowsy, right?
Just push on forward. That's right.
Keep on trucking, baby. Keep on trucking.
Back to something semi-serious, not really, but...
You're back to the show?
Sort of. Yeah. Okay. The show.
Oh my God, the doll just fell down my shirt.
You got attacked by an apple.
I think that's karma.
I mean, well, it did landed him up. Yeah, that's...
I was going to ask, do you find it unique issues investigating historic sites versus private residences?
Yeah, there's definitely differences. I think I actually find more problems with how comfortable people are in private residence because they feel like I'm invading their privacy, and I really don't want to come out with that. Coming in with cameras and all sorts of things, and okay, hi, we're gonna kind of shut off all the lights and take over now. But I have found it is harder to get into historical places. But fortunately for me, I have a friend who is also a paranormal investigator, and she is got the silver tongue, and she can talk her way into anywhere. She's awesome, so I kind of piggyback on her a lot. Of like, she's like, hey, guess what? I talked this place into letting us come in. I'm like, really? Because they said no to everybody.
Oh, wait a minute. So she really carries you on her back?
I follow her around.
This is my new stipulation for doing investigations. I want to be carried around like a prince. Well, at least be.
Should we get the little?
Come here, Ben.
Get the little thing with the.
Yeah, what is that thing called?
I don't know.
I was reading about that today. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your story. I'm sorry.
Okay. Please go ahead, Kathryn.
But one thing that I've noticed is that if you're talking with historically older spirits, you have to kind of watch the language that you use, and I don't mean like swearing, because they know that. But they seem to. I have noticed people will come in and they'll use modern terms, modern slang, and then they tend to shut down. They don't know what you're talking about.
Kind of like someone coming in speaking another language, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I try to make it a point that if I am talking, like recently I went to a grave cemetery that has several Revolutionary War graves, and there's been reports of activity. That when I'm trying to make contact there, I make sure that I am speaking clearly and not using terms or phrases that would be confusing or upsetting.
Right.
Because you got to understand there was a lot of historical changes too, so you don't want to be, going into, where the Boston Tea Party was and be like, would you like a cup of tea? You know what I mean? Exactly. You have to be respectful. You have to do some history, and you have to approach it like you would if you were going to a different country and speaking to somebody with a different culture. You want to learn a little bit so you don't accidentally offend somebody or end up, being
or just alienate them.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, I try to realize I'm in their house, wherever it is, whether it's out, somewhere else. I want to be a respectful guest.
We often, if we're at a place that's with a period haunting, we'll try to figure out what terminology or jargon would have been used there in the kind of business that they had, etc.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. I want her to know we have 2 minutes left.
Okay, we won't tell her. Either that or it's just about here.
2 minutes.
He's trying to give me the warning.
This is how my nephew eats. It's like it's a chore. It cracks me up.
One of my children is like that. I get that. How many bites do I have to eat, Mommy? It's killing me. No matter
I think he's just stuffing himself until he pops. I mean, because he's like, then he gets macaroni and cheese in his hair.
He's eating secretly. Then when dinner comes, it's torture.
Yeah, probably. So,
Kathryn, is there anything that you would like to highlight or anything so that so we can get it out to the viewers and how they can get a hold of you and your books?
You can always check me out on www.authorkathrynkaye.com, and my last name is Kaye, if that helps. And you can find me on Amazon and Kindle. Oh, and right now, anybody who leaves a review for the Ghost Family of Pennsylvania is entered into a contest to win a free EMF meter. So that's going on until June 25th. So, and anybody who's already left reviews, they are already entered. They don't have to go in there and try to do anything else. So
that's pretty cool.
But please read the book first. I want honest reviews. I don't want people just going up and bed doing that. I want to know what people actually think. It helps me to improve future books. So.
Exactly. Anything else coming up that you want to plug real quick?
Check out Unseen Visitors. It'll be coming out in the summer. You can definitely find it on YouTube, and that'll probably be like the easiest. You just type it in, and there'll be lots of great shows coming out.
Awesome.
And
everybody stay tuned. Kevin Betzer from Deep South Paranormal is going to be on Selena Roan, Closer to Death.
Thank you, folks. Stay tuned next week.
Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn. Bye-bye. Kathryn, we're really glad that you are here tonight, and I'm really interested in hearing some of your experiences. Kathryn is the author of the True Tales of Ghostly Encounters book series, as well as some fiction books, and that's interesting to learn about the differences and dynamics of writing those different genres. But Kathryn, tell us how you got into the wonderful field of paranormal investigation.
Well, ever since I was a child, it seems that I've been a little bit more sensitive to spirits, if you will. I'm not going to say I'm a psychic or anything like that. I don't want to misrepresent myself, but I'm just a little bit more sensitive. I think I see a little bit more, hear a little bit more, pay attention a little bit more.
Yeah.
And when I was a little girl, the house that I grew up in, there were these colored lights that would follow me around all the time when I was a child. Didn't seem to mess with anybody else, but they...
Good evening. It's Sunday evening. This is Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
I'm John.
This is John. He's not wearing a hat, but he has a prop today, a doll head.
Doll heads, cute little doll heads. Are you wanting to talk? Go ahead. I was singing. Go ahead.
No, I was enjoying it.
Oh.
Stage fright?
A little bit.
Okay. And this is John's favorite, from one of his favorite haunted locations.
Hate dolls and grandmas.
Grandma ghosts.
Scary.
And Eric,
Grandma
just for you.
I'm always been pretty open-minded to the different stories and experiences of other people, and I think not shooting people down when they talk about it kind of pushed me in that direction as well. Yeah.
Awesome. So now my understanding is that after investigating, you got pretty interested and fascinated with a particular case that led to your first book. Is that right?
That is absolutely true. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
When I first went into the house, the big thing was there is this window it's like a back door. It has like a glass window, leads to the outside. And the family that was there was kind of like freaking out because there was this face in a window. And I don't mean just like an outline. I mean, you could see everything in this face that had appeared. I don't know if you remember back in like the 80s, you would get like little bubble gum packs and they would like holograms in them, or they followed me constantly. And I think that's kind of where I got my initial interest, was just ever since I could remember, there was always something around me or in some way presenting itself to me. And so I just kind of went from there. I wanted to learn more. I'm very scientific minded, so I think that I bring that along as well. And I try to find, rational explanations whenever I can. It gives people peace of mind, but there are times in which there just simply is no rational explanation.
That's very true, very true. So what made you take the leap from the interest to investigating?
just from people wanting to ask me to come in. I don't know how I managed to get a reputation. It's kind of a small town. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah. And, people are like, you know what? She seems to be able to have a little bit of better luck communicating, and it just kind of escalated from there.
Yeah, and Eric, just for you, this doll head is from Bad Grandma's house. So.
No, mannequins are hot, Eric. Love mannequins. Oh.
You're thinking of blow-up dolls.
Oh, right. Never mind. Okay. I don't like mannequins either.
Okay, we'll get serious here. I wouldn't do that.
And that's probably worth more than my life.
Yeah, it is from Germany.
You sure?
Yeah, it's got the mark on the back.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. And while John digresses, we want to welcome our guest tonight, Kathryn Kaye. Kathryn is an author and paranormal investigator from the Pennsylvania area.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and just, I know you can't see it on screen, but John just covered up the doll. I think he buried it. So. So we're kind of initiating Kathryn by fire here.